Hello, we are going to be focused on the uneven baste in this example. So in our video today, you can see on this sample here, we have the uneven baste and we also have the even baste down here, which you can see in another video. The uneven baste, as you can see, is uneven between the stitch and the space, where with an even base they are the same. If we flip this over, you can see that it is uneven stitch length between where on the even stitch the space and the stitch are the same length. So let's look at how we're going to do this particular stitch. This is a temporary stitch, and so with any temporary stitch, the idea is that we are going to baste together two layers that would be removed later. Sometimes this is just to mark lines on the exterior. Sometimes this is to temporarily hold together a seam or a hem until we are able to apply the actual stitch that would be used for the permanent setting. So we are going to be starting with a couple of basic tools, as we always would. You need some needles. I'm doing a millimeter 10 for beginner stitcher. I recommend a 9 sharp. You also should have some thread conditioner or wax. The thread conditioner is my preferred method of getting my thread so that it doesn't tangle. And again, I'm going to run that through there, and I'm going to just quickly rub that through my fingers so there's no excess residue on the thread. I'm just using regular Coats & Clark Dual Duty. It's a polyester, 100% polyester thread. I've chosen a dark color so that you can see the on the material. For my guideline, I've just marked this with a friction marker. I've kept it light colored so that we can see the stitching. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is we need to do a Tailor Tack. So I'm going to turn this. I like to stitch sort of away from myself. Sometimes people are going to stitch side to side. So if you're a side to side stitcher, you would be stitching from the right to the left if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, you could go the other direction, whatever's most comfortable for you. I prefer to stitch away from me, so I'm stitching upwards. I am first going to do a Tailor Tack. So a Tailor Tack is a temporary knot, essentially. You are going to take a stitch, leave a tail, stitch over this at least 2 times, and this will keep the thread from coming undone. Now this is an uneven base. That means the amount of fabric, the thread that's showing on top and the amount that is showing underneath are of different lengths. So for this sample, I'm going to do the opposite of what I showed you in the previous one. We are going to do a small top stitch, and then the under stitch is going to be longer. So in essence, I've stitched about 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm coming up probably about 3/4 of an inch. And so again, I'm going to take a small stitch, which is about 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to come up 3/4 of an inch. And I'm just going to do a couple more stitches. And as you can see now, with our stitching, our thread that's showing on top is very short. The space between each stitch is long. If I flip this over, it is the opposite. It is long with a short space. Which one you choose to do is going to matter on what your application is. If I want it to be marking a line on the exterior, maybe so I can see where the trim is going to be, then I'm going to use the method that I'm doing right now so that my outside of my fabric has the more solid line. If I'm basting up a hem for a rehearsal or until I can get the real hem set, then I'm going to do the other stitching, which was the one we showed you before, where then it has very little thread showing on the exterior, so that we don't see that and it's not distracted by that on the exterior of the garment. When I get done here, I'm going to take about a 1/2 inch stitch, and I am going to stitch over that exact same point 2 or 3 times to create my Tailor Tack at the end. When I'm done with that, I'm going to leave a tail, and now my stitching is done. As you can see from this side, it is a long space in between the shorter stitch lengths, or if I flip it over on the exterior of my garment, you would see more solid line with small spaces in between. So this is our uneven baste. Remember when you're doing this to not pull your fabric. It should lay nice and smooth, just like this one is. Good luck with your basting.